And I ask them, who guaranteed the man they're going to guarantee me? How long will a fool hate knowledge? Never equate knowledge with intelligence. Let us get excited about our lives. The only thing that keeps me moving with my people, knowing that God is a just God. I got a mission. I want to make a contribution to this world. Spend more time helping people than I do running the business, but God will keep his word.
You have just heard the words of Dr. Joe L. Dudley Sr., the co-founder of the Dudley Products Company and world-renowned entrepreneur and humanitarian. My name is Jimmy Davies, founder of Every Dot Black, and it's my honor and privilege to welcome you to the Dr. Joe L. Dudley Sr. Legacy Project podcast. As a child, he was labeled mentally retarded and suffered from a speech impediment, but his mother never stopped believing in him and was responsible for him overcoming these obstacles. In 1957, he invested $10 in a Fuller Products sales kit and created a company bringing in over $35 million annually. Along the way, he has mentored thousands, including myself, about entrepreneurship and has trained over 30,000 cosmetologists. Dr. Dudley's life story is a shining example of how to walk by faith and make your dreams come true. And that is why we have created the Dr. Joe L. Dudley Sr. Legacy Project to document and preserve his life of service and entrepreneurship. Please support this effort by subscribing to his podcast at www.joeldudleysr.com, where you can see his awards, photographs, and hear the speeches, and also the interviews of those who have been a part of the Dudley family throughout the years. Thank you in advance for your contribution.
Hello, Dr. Beverly. How are you?
I am wonderful. I'm wonderful, and you are looking wonderful as usual. We know that you came to talk with us today. We know that you are a history lesson about Dudley, and we're so happy that you are here to talk with us. If you would, start your talk with us by giving us some personal background information, where you're from, maybe a little bit about your childhood. And then from there, if you would, start to give us some information on how you met Mr. Dudley and how you became a part of that company. And what were some of your goals in that company, some of your positions? So some general information about you and your relationship with Mr. Dudley, Mrs. Dudley, and the company.
And the Dudley family. Oh my goodness. Dr. Beverly is just, it's so much. I don't even know if we have enough time to talk about the successes, the experiences, the joys, the pleasures I have had with Dudley Products and with the Dudley Products family. But my name again is Betty R. Clawson. I grew up in a little town called Mineral Springs, North Carolina. I was actually born in High Point, North Carolina. In fact, 1614 Kivett Drive, for those of you that know anything about High Point. So a lot of times when I tell people that I was born in High Point, and then of course Dudley Beauty Corp is back in High Point now, they're always so surprised. But yeah, that's where I was born, and I grew up in a little town called Mineral Springs. It was hidden between Monroe and Charlotte in North Carolina. From a big family, there were 9 of us, 6 boys and 3 girls. We grew up on the farm. Mom and dad, dad was a sharecropper and had some property as well. So we had to go to school part-time and we had to work with the farm part-time. My brother Johnny and I had responsibilities of coming home, going to the field, helping to weigh cotton and pay the people. So early on, Daddy had us doing business. We didn't know we were doing business. We thought it was just a chore that we had to go and pay the people and figure out what they was supposed to get paid. But we did that, and it taught us a lot about business when we were young. So I think one of the reasons that both of us have such an appreciation for what we learned when we came to Dudley was because our background had been grounded in the farm, and knowing that if we didn't sell cotton, we didn't have no money. If we didn't do certain things, we didn't make money. So Johnny, of course, went to A&T State University. And as he was working his way through A&T State University, he started selling Dudley products. So he this particular week, he said he was going to sell $1,000 in 1 week. And he promised Mr. Dudley he was going to do that. And he was doing it part-time while he worked at Sears at the same time. And so he came to Charlotte, where I was living at that time, and had to get me to help sell the product. The first thing he did, he brought Mr. and Mrs. Dudley down to my house in Charlotte, and we did a big cookout in the back. But then he had me to come to 717 East Market Street to a meeting. And I may have the story confused, but he had me to come to the meeting and sit in the meeting. And as I sat in the meeting, a young man named Jimmy Cheek talked from a book called The Magic of Thinking Big. The story in the book was about Mr. Triumph and Mr. Defeat. Who is managing your business, Mr. Triumph or Mr. Defeat? And so I thought that was such an interesting way to think of things. At that time, I was working for the telephone company, and that particular meeting, I was really sharp. My shoes had been in the layaway for probably about 2 months. My suit had been in the layaway because I was going to the CIAA tournament. So my outfit had been in the layaway because it had to be sharp to go to CIAA. And so I went to the meeting, and when Jimmy Cheek finished talking, Mr. Dudley came up and talked about how he wanted to spread all over the country. He wanted to spread the message of self-sufficiency. He wanted to spread his products. And what he talked about, I had never heard a Black man talk like that. My dad had talked to us about business somewhat, but spreading all over the country and changing lives. And he had the same melanin in him that I had in me. He did not look like those folk at the telephone company where I worked. Mm-hmm. I was just amazed. I said, wait a minute. I've got to see more about what this man is about. And the other thing that was so amazing, when we walked in the door at 717 East Market Street that Saturday morning, there was this young lady up front that was real bouncy. Go on back, Johnny Robinson, go on back. It's a demonstration going on, go on back. And I thought, okay, she's got lots of energy. And that was Mrs. Dudley. And so none of these people I had met before. So I think the invitation to my house was afterwards. And yes, that's right. The invitation was after I had met them, because this was the first time meeting them. Well, I left that meeting that day. I don't remember a lot about the CI tournament that day, but I left that meeting with a $10 bag of merchandise in my hand. And I have been selling Dudley ever since. I often think about what if I had not gone to that meeting, because I went actually to Greensboro from Charlotte, drove and took my daughter basically for the CIAA tournament. And it was just a way that I could get away from, get away from home for a little bit. And had I not gone to that meeting, chances are Dudley Beauty College would not be doing the kind of things it's doing now. And I would not have had the experiences that I've had. Shortly after then, and stop me at any time if you have questions, Beverly, because you know I can talk. Shortly after starting and recruiting people, we recruited very rapidly. And every other week, we would drive from Charlotte to Greensboro with my team, my crew, and we would go to the meeting. And then we get products and we bring it back to Charlotte to sell. The team grew very rapidly. And during that time, Mr. Dudley said, why don't you open an office? And I said, open an office? He says, yeah. He says, how much are they paying you at the telephone company? I said, they're paying me $96.50 a week. And that was quite a bit for then. he says, I'm gonna pay you more than they pay you. I'm gonna pay you $100 a week. And so I said, well, I tell you what. I mean, you know, I've got seniority at the phone company, and I've got a desk with my name on it, and I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a leave of absence because I believe in what you're doing and I want to see it grow and I think it can help our community. So I'm going to take a leave of absence from the telephone company and get this started for you. Never went back.
I was just going to come back to a question that someone had posed, which may really relate to what you are talking about right now. And that question is, what was the business culture like at Dudley back in the days? Yes.
That was 70s, yeah. The culture of the business was as professional as it is now. Very competitive. You go into the front of the building. In the front of the building, there were products that people could come in and buy. And then you go into the back room, and in the back room was a sales meeting. The sales meeting every morning started, I want to think it was at 9. I want to think every morning at 9, I think. I think it started at 9, and it started by singing. Very much as we do in our meetings now. Some of us saying, come on in, it's meeting time, come on in, let's start on time. So can you imagine me coming from the telephone company and walking in and saying, okay, all right, what is this going on? But the professionalism was there. The respect was amazing. Everybody dressed, the men dressed with suits and ties. And it was something that allowed me and others to understand that a Black man had a conception that could change the world. And I saw that early on.
Okay. Did you have any experience with Mr. Fuller by any chance?
Oh my God. I don't know if any of you out there have my book. If it wasn't in you, you wouldn't see it in me, but I talk about that in the book. Mr. Dudley, and I'm glad you asked me that because see, I didn't even think about talking about that. Mr. Dudley was very concerned about a challenge that I had. Anytime I would get upset or felt anybody was doing anything wrong, my anger would not come out expressively. It would come out in tears. I would just cry. I would cry. And this particular time, somebody had been taking money from the company. I don't remember exactly what he was talking about. And I said, I just cannot believe that. And at that time, we were building in Charlotte, and I was working very hard in Charlotte. So I would cry. And so Mr. Fuller came to North Carolina, and we were in the meeting, and Mr. Dudley said to Mr. Fuller, Mr. Fuller, Betty cries. When she gets upset, she she cries. She loses it and start crying. And Mr. Fuller said the reason she cried, or when somebody's taking something, is because she doesn't have the courage. She wants to steal, but she doesn't have the courage to do it. So she cries. He said, if I could stop Betty from crying, she would become a powerful woman. And at that time, I said, well, I got to get control. I got to control. So when things get to me, I have a tendency to remember Mr. Fuller saying, if I could stop Betty from crying. Mm-hmm. And I reflect back on that and realize that, okay, you can handle this and handle it. And sometimes it means that I'll get a little edgy and talk a little bit with more emphasis than I normally would. But that was a change in my life. My time with Mr. S.B. Fuller was just amazing. I left Charlotte at one point and opened a branch here in Chicago. And at 109th and Western, I found the branch. I brought people from Charlotte, but I did not do well in Chicago. I was not comfortable in Chicago. I remember reading where people would do things. They hit your window and take your gold chains. And I just had all kinds of things that I was afraid of in Chicago. So when I came to Chicago at the request of Mr. Dudley and brought some people and opened the branch, I didn't do very well, not because of the fact that the opportunity was there. It was just that my mindset was not prepared for Chicago. And so we were at Fuller Products one night at a meeting, and I came out and the console of my Cadillac was gone. The whole console was gone. I said, I got to get out of here. I can't handle this. Mr. Dudley allowed me to go and open up Memphis, Tennessee, which proved to be, I think, one of the greatest experiences of my life. I moved to Memphis to open the Beauty Route in Memphis. And at that time that I went, there was nobody selling Dudley products to the salons in Memphis, Tennessee. And the Memphis experience allowed me to grow. It allowed me to open up Arkansas, Mississippi, all of Tennessee. And we had several sales reps that I was able to recruit. Larry Johnson, Charles Beverly, the wife and husband. Oh, I can't remember their names. They're going to beat me up. Can't think of it right now. Can't think of their names right now. But anyway, they came and we had a tremendous, my brother George Robinson, Wayne and Millicent came, and we were doing over $1 million in that area years and years ago. We had meetings just like we had. I remember one particular time, Quentin Nettles, James Walker, some other people came, and we had a big event at the Memphis Merchandise Mart. I think it's the Merchandise Mart, and it was over 700 people. Mr. Dudley came. We had 700 people for a dinner and classes, very much like we do with the EMS today. But we just did outstanding things. The thing that I think I appreciate from Mr. and Mrs. Dudley so much is the trust that they have given to me and others. They've allowed us to run businesses and do some things. And sometimes I know that some of the things that we did were not profitable for them, but they allowed us to learn from it. And it's that there's no amount of money that you can put on the kind of trust that they gave us.
Okay. That is wonderful. There has also been a request for a story that you've told us before about the building in Chicago that you came close to losing.
Oh, okay, okay. Actually, we were located at 1756 through 60 West 95th Street. And I'll go back and tell that entire story. I don't think I talked about I was at Dudley Cosmetology University, the founding dean. I didn't talk about that. But at one point, after leaving that position, being the founding dean of Dudley Cosmetology University, I worked in public relations. Well, in public relations, I did not handle money. See, when we had Dudley Cosmetology University, there were times that I had in my trunk after Saturday night $50,000-$60,000 that we had taken in. So I was accustomed to handling big sums of money. Well, in public relations, you go out and you sell the company. You go out and you meet people and you tell them how great the company is and you expose the company, but there's no financial remains. You're not taking in money. You're creating more information or more media about the company, but I wasn't handling money, and I just didn't feel that I was really being effective. Well, Mr. Dudley asked me one day, he said, I want to ride down to a meeting in Raleigh. I want you to ride with me. So we rode down there and he said, I want to open a school in Chicago. And I said, oh, in that building, because we had bought this building at 95th Street. He said, I want you to ride down there with me. And, I want to open a school. And I said, oh, that's a good idea. He said, who you thinking run it? I said, oh, Sheila Hayes, Clawson. I named everybody because I knew he did not want me to come back to Chicago. Because you remember in Chicago, they broke in my car. You certainly don't want me to go back to Chicago. So he said, he says, I think I want to open a school. And then one day we were having something in Kernersville, a festival, and he asked me to come over to the house. And he and Miss Dudley was sitting there ready to talk to me. This was the kill. Betty, we want you to go and open a school in Chicago. I thought, oh, no, don't send me back to Chicago. I mean, but after all, all you've done for my family, I cannot say no. So I left the house that day. I left interlaken crying, but I went home, got my tissue, told my daughter, told Sherry, I said, well, look like I'm going to be going to Chicago. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll be there for a year and a half. But in a year and a half, I'm going to find somebody to run it because I am not going to stay in Chicago. Well, that was 27 years ago. 27 years ago this September, we opened Dudley Beauty College in Chicago. And we were in a building. We grew by leaps and bounds. Just people came from everywhere. We opened up with the cosmetology school, then we opened up the nail school, then we opened up the aesthetic school, then we had advanced training. And then one day at that point, we had night and day about 300 students. And then one day the city said, we want your property. It's called eminent domain. And all the other schools, some of the other schools that we had, Mr. Dudley had closed them because schools was not the most profitable part of Dudley Products. Dudley Products Company's profit came from manufacturing and distribution. Education has never been and probably never will be the most profitable part of the company. And so when they wanted to buy the building, that meant I had to go and find somewhere for us to go if we intended to keep a school in Chicago. And Mrs. Dudley said, we want to keep Chicago as a school. And that was her. She took over the education part of the business. And I felt the same. Even though I said I wasn't going to be here but a year and a half, I put a lot into it. So we started trying to find a place. Of course, the property belonged to Dudley Products. So when the money came, when the city paid us for the building, the money went to Dudley Products. So the school then had to find a place. And let me tell you, finding a place was just unbelievable. We finally found this building that we're in now that was an old police department. It was deserted. It had been deserted for over 4 years. And it was dilapidated. The outside of the structure of the building was really good, but inside was deplorable. I mean, can you imagine leaving refrigerators in there for over 4 years with food in it, and it was just not clean. So I ended up, we ended up offering the city to buy the building, and so I offered them $1. And the gentleman that I was talking to said, well, Miss Clawson, I can't promise you cannot get it, that you won't get it for $1, but it'll take a long time. And he said, what I need for you to do is at least give us $5,000, I believe was what he asked for, $5,000. And if you want it, that'll hold it. And then I think 10 days, and then you got to give me $50,000. Well, at that point, I didn't have. I ran up to Citibank and got $5,000. I was talking to Miss Dudley about this the other day. And then she found a way, after I gave them the $5,000 to hold it, she found a way to advance us some money that I'm presently getting ready to give her back. And so we were able to get the building, and then we had to acquire financing. We had to acquire a loan. So then a friend of mine that worked for Harris Bank worked with me, and we were able to get a loan. He said, well, how much do you want? I said, well, I think if we had $500,000, that we should be able to renovate that building with $500,000. So they gave us a loan for $500,000. Well, that $500,000 went by so fast. I think when we finished with the renovation of this building, we had to do a total gut, and ended up spending about $1.5 million for renovation. And they gave us some more. They gave us another loan, and then we still didn't have enough to finish the outside. But thanks to what's been going on lately with PPP and some other things, we may be able to finish the outside. But the thing that was so amazing about Mr. and Mrs. Dudley, they were so helpful and so supportive that none of this would have happened without them. So it's not me, it's the Dudley in me, which is another story I have to tell. I have to tell this story because this one is one, and this is one that I write about in my book as well. But I followed Mrs. Dudley and Mr. Dudley so closely, and when Mrs. Dudley was pregnant with Jania, for some reason, God allowed me to get pregnant. And I said, well, I am following Mrs. Dudley. And so Mr. Dudley would always say, when people would say, Joe Dudley, you're doing such a great job, he would say, it's not me, it's the Fuller in me. Well, people would say, I'm in Charlotte and recruiting and doing. And I would say, it's not me. It's the Dudley in me. So during my pregnancy, Mr. Dudley said, Betty, you can't say that now. You can't say that. You can't say it's a Dudley in me right now. But seriously.
That caused the problem.
that may cause a problem. So, but that is another funny story that I tell a lot about. When you're following someone so closely, you find that you pick up a lot of their traits, and you pick up a lot of their colloquialisms, and even the way they do things, the way they move their hands, and you pick up a lot of qualities from them.
Well, Miss Betty, if you could tell us what impact did your relationship with the Dudley family and the Dudley Company have on your life?
Oh my goodness. Everything that I do, from working with these students to an award that I just received on this past Sunday from a young lady that said that I reminded her of Mary McLeod Bethune in the way that I work with young people. She said, she says, when I was in college, I studied her, and everything you do just remind me so much of Mary McLeod Bethune. And I told her then that, and she asked me, why do I do it? And I said, well, the reason that I do what I do is because of the scripture, where much is given, much is required. And because of that, that saying, where much is given, much is required, so much have been given to me. So much have been given to me and my family. When I go back and look at the Dudleys gave my daughters, Terry and Sherry, an opportunity to go to a country, learn to speak Portuguese, open up a market. Two little girls that had no experience in working abroad, gave them that opportunity. Have given most of my brothers an opportunity to sell. I think about my brother William, who passed away, and how he would speak, and how at his funeral people talked about his leadership. And I mean, he was a partying fella, but he had people in business that he was able to advise. I went to my other brother's funeral, George's funeral, a few years ago, and his whole church talked about how he led them and encouraged them and gave them information, and how the church would lean on his leadership. So when I think about how the Dudleys and the Dudley family and the Dudley Company have been so instrumental in my family becoming leaders, sometimes we don't recognize the impact we have on the people around us. Mm-hmm. But when you think differently, when you act differently, there's a saying: when you walk like a duck and talk and quack like a duck, perhaps you're a duck. When you act like a leader and behave like a leader and people are following you, you are a leader. But this did not come by anything I did personally. It's because I have been put in an environment where people appreciate me and allow me to grow. And so I will forever be grateful. Everything that I'm doing, even as being the president of my condo association, and all that I do, is because of the fact that the leadership role that I have been given and experienced at Dudley have made me there.
Oh, that is absolutely fabulous. That is a wonderful story, Miss Betty. Is there anything else you can think of that you might want to share with us before we open up there?
Well, Dr. Beverly, I just thank you for being such a great interviewer, because you're pulling things out of me that I didn't even know I was going to say.
Well, I know you have a great story, and I have been reading your book. I have to admit that I have not read the whole book, but I do have it, and I am reading it, and it's very interesting. Very interesting.
Just don't tell the juicy part. Don't tell the dirt.
Well, I'm just going to leave it to people to get that book and read it. But interesting story, and a inspiration for those individuals who are out there and want to write a book.
Yeah. I often talk about the in Mr. Dudley's book the story of the introduction. When Sherry was not doing well at the Germantown Middle School when we were living in Memphis, Mr. Dudley, she was not doing well, and I was concerned about her not doing well, and I mentioned it to Mr. Dudley, and he called her up while I wasn't at home and told her to just say over and over and over again, I am, I can, and I will. I am, I can, and I will. Over and over and over again. And she did very, very well. And since then, Dr. Bell, she is doing excellent and have done extremely excellent ever since then. Both my daughters, both of them, and they grew up in Dudley. That's all they know. That's all they know. Terry has never had another position at all. And then, of course, Sherry, when Sherry left Dudley, she went to work for the new Winston-Salem Journal for a minute. And then when she left Winston-Salem Journal, she opened her own company. So she has her own firm, and she's doing very well at the same time.
That is wonderful, and congratulations on the accomplishments of motherhood and producing those wonderful daughters who are, I'm sure you're so proud of.
Absolutely, absolutely.